Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GothamChess Slowrun. In this series, I'm playing on an authorized account on chess.com, starting at 400 ELO, moving up the rating ladder, explaining my thought process to all of you so all of you can win more games, gain more ELO, become stronger players, and enjoy your life on the 64 squares. This is episode number 9. For this episode, we are rated 650. We're about to get into the games. It just so happens that today happens to be the 9th of November. And Daniel Naroditsky would have turned 30 years old today. I posted something on Twitter. I will summarize my thoughts here. I've been talking about it quite a lot. I'm not one of these performative influencers who's going to be touching this subject again and again, because it's like hot news or because I feel like I have to or something like that. It's been 3 weeks and it still doesn't feel real. Danya impacted so many people's lives, and I think many people are struggling. And my heart goes out to all of you. Stay strong. I know for myself, I've been trying to make a better effort in connecting with friends, going out a little bit more rather than, living just comfortably under the roof of my own house and just sort of, being an introvert, an extroverted introvert, if you will. Trying to put myself out there a little bit more and living every day, one step at a time. So without further ado, let's play some chess. Let's learn a couple of things. And let's keep on moving. Let's stay strong. Soon we will have new images for the profile pictures. But for now, we still have... Okay, our first opponent aborted. They aborted the game. Okay, that's a good start. I don't know if they knew who they were playing or if they just disconnected. I'm gonna play e4 for this first game. My opponent plays the Scandinavian defense. Very decent opening. One thing I would like to show all of you is how to play the advanced pawn position. So the Scandinavian defense is completely reasonable. The best way, to meet it is to take. A lot of people push this pawn. It's not a great move. That's not a great move in response, though, and we will get into that because the D and C pawns actually want to go together. By playing this move, you kind of allow me to lock my pawns like this in the center of the board, and now your knight doesn't exert as much pressure as you would like. Now, the opponent moved the knight here. What I like to do here is just immediately take this knight, because what this does is it damages the pawn structure, and if black ever castles, black's king will be wide open. One more thing. Since we took with the dark squared bishop, we need to rebuild our pawns on the dark squares. This is extremely important. I cannot stress this enough. And our opponent will try to develop the light squared bishop. To be honest with you, you can pin here, or you can trade the bishop. This is a very normal maneuver to try to bring the queen out. The opponent does in fact trade. And now we will develop our knight here. I was actually expecting this move. We're not going to take. We want to keep our central pawn presence and actually protect with a pawn. So pushing as many pawns onto dark squares as possible, given the fact that we no longer have a dark squared bishop. And now we just simply recapture like this, and now we will get our knights out and decide where to castle. Obviously, my opponent should castle that way. Wow, my opponent zips the knight backwards. What's funny is that now my original plan had been to develop the knights. I'm just going to sort of absent-mindedly do that, although this move gave me new information that I didn't previously have, and I will show you why you always have to look for checks at this level. This move is an attack on this pawn that can be protected by pushing it one square. It can also be protected by the fancier move, which is actually just castling the king. And, you shouldn't really be afraid of this. Now, sharp-minded viewers will realize I missed queen takes pawn, right? And, these things, like, let's see how long this stays possible. It's still possible, right? Now it's actually an even more powerful move because I would be attacking two different pieces. And, I can also centralize my rooks. A lot of you would be watching this and not really know how to make progress now that all of these pawns are standing. And that's why I want to teach you a little bit how to play more closed positions with more subtleties of how to move pawns. But ultimately, a lot of chess at the 600-700 level will be decided... 600-700 level, oh my god. Will be decided by blunders. And, my opponent here might walk the king into the defense and simply get walloped. It's a nice move, actually. It's a nice move, actually. I didn't think my opponent would spot this queen move. It's a very nice move. So now I'm thinking like, well, what do I do? You know, I can't take anything. I can get my knight in. You got to sometimes jump to the outskirts of the board with the knight to go forward. I can also bring my queen back, of course, but let's keep trying to make some forward progress. My opponent plays knight to c6, obviously. Now we have some possibilities here. We can trade the queen. We can move our knight to the f5 square. We can go to g6, although from g6 we don't threaten anything. I like this move because we straight up just threatened the bishop, and now the bishop has to move. Now, if the queen continues to protect, the queen would be walking directly into the line of fire of the rook. And you should sort of be sensing something is wrong here. Now, my opponent doesn't spot that, and now I can take here. The best move for black now would be queen g4. Very tricky move, by the way. That would be, and it is played, and many people here would lose the game. They would lose the game here because they would see that the knight is under attack, and it's not easy to protect the knight. They would move the knight, and by moving the knight, you activate the battery of the queen and the rook. Right now, it's disconnected. But you would activate the battery, and literally, anywhere you move the knight, you lose the game to checkmate. Now, the way to defend this knight, you could defend it by moving the rook here. Personally, and that looks okay, but it's very congested. The cleanest move by far here is to go for CCA as always. Checks, captures, attacks. And you would need to spot here, you have a check, and then your knight would take back. So we would go check, the queen would take, and now you just need to realize the knight that is in danger can get out of danger. Then you're just up a knight. It's a very important defensive maneuver. Many of you would spot this. I think my opponent's going to go e6 and lose this pawn. Or maybe they would go here. I don't know. Okay, rook g5. That move actually doesn't attack the knight, but I'm going to take the pawn anyway. And now a very normal blunder is rook h8, blundering a fork. A lot of people would go rook here, attack the knight, and walk directly into the fork. Or that, but that still walks directly. Yeah, knights forking rooks, ages, tale as old as time. I will tell you, we won this game. Well, we won this game because we're doing a slow run, and obviously I'm going to be winning a lot of games, and I make it look a lot easier than it is. Trust me, you're gonna get into a game and go, "What? It looks so much easier when I'm watching the slow run." It's the chances are there in your games. It's just about taking them. All right, my opponent sacks the rook. Of course, I will just take, and I guess they're going to give me another check. Rule of thumb, generally, when you're really defending against one piece, is just like hide in the corner. But I could have literally walked the king to the other side of the board. One rook is not going to do anything. I'm kind of hoping my opponent puts the knight here just so I can trade it off. I don't think they will. Okay, I stand corrected. And now we will just try to trade the rook. That's what we're going to do. And now my opponent is going to go king here, and I will give a check, and then I will win the rook. Or king there, and then I will defend my knight. Or I'm going to try to bait that. I'm going to bait this. Yes. Check. And we will be taking the rook on the next move. But first we will drink some water. Be well hydrated. And then we will analyze this game. This game was instructive because it was a closed position. It was a position with many pawns on the board. Kind of a rigid structure. Look, as always, how do you convert positions like this? The easiest, as always, is to make a queen. Okay, my opponent just resigns. If we don't have a lot of time, if we have about a minute on the clock here, you need to win all the pawns. Why? Because if you lose on time, you would lose the game. But remember, in chess, there is a rule of insufficient checkmating material. So if your opponent is only with a king, or with like a king and a knight, or a king and a bishop, material with which they cannot checkmate, you can checkmate somebody theoretically with 5 pawns, because you could also queen one of them. You only need 1 pawn. So you don't want to lose the game and lose. You don't want to lose on time and lose. You would rather lose on time and draw. But with this amount of time, I mean, I would just hunt the king down with my rooks and the knight, or you can just make a queen. These pawns are not going to do anything to you. And now we can analyze. So e4, d5. Now, Scandinavian defense, a lot of people, I love the Scandinavian. I've been playing it for about a year plus now, very consistently, very good results. If you are ever watching the slow run and you like how I explain things, you want to learn some more, You know I have Chessly, which is my educational platform, and you should know we are working on a mobile app, finally. That will be in beta testing soon for those that are already on the site. So if you haven't signed up yet, you might as well. December is going to be a crazy month. We're going to be doing a community challenge with rewards and you know, game analysis, and we're going to be giving away signed merch, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Chessly in December is going to be a lot of fun. New courses, finally dropping a bunch of new courses. So if you're ever learning, if you ever want to learn, I have a Scandinavian course on there, and I use my own Scandinavian course to beat grandmasters. So the Scandinavian is a fantastic opening. Having said that, when you play e5, you know, you kind of like take space away from the opponent. And for black, the best way to deal with e5 for a Scandinavian player is to put the d and c pawns together. Why? Because they fight for the center. It's better to fight for the center with pawns and then with the knight. Then the knight fights for that square and attacks that pawn, right? And this is the best move. And then white struggles to put a second pawn in the center. When you play knight c6, it immediately goes to plus 0.4. And then when you play this move, it is now plus 1. So we've just made 3 moves, and black is already significantly worse in this position. You need to fight for the center with pawns or with pieces. There is no fight happening here. The knight is not attacking either of the pawns, and frankly, black doesn't have enough reinforcement. And this move is important because even though you're trading a bishop for a knight, which traditionally is not good, if you can trade a bishop for a knight and split the pawns like that, it is fantastic. Because what ultimately happens is, like we saw in the game, the pawns just get picked off. And black can't castle that way because black will come under fire. You have ideas like this, but you need to follow it up correctly. If you follow it up like this, you immediately lose your advantage. Why? Because when you trade a bishop, you cannot then open the position. The person that is trading away the bishops prefers the position to a degree stays closed. Bishops like space. They like open lines. These pawns are restricting. And you'll notice that in this game, I built a fence. I built a fence to stop my opponent from moving. Then I tried to trade that bishop. Why that bishop? Because that bishop was strong. Did I have to? No, but it was a strong piece. And now the best move for black was to continue to develop and try to make progress, like castling while also defending. Instead, what my opponent did is they went, oh, I can take, or they could rock back. The rock back method with the bishop is also very, very nice, because then you would be taking like this and improving your pawns. But this is quite bad. Why is this bad? Because your king needs to get out of the center. You need to play your pawns in a way that feel like a puzzle, where every puzzle piece slots into the other one, right? Like this belongs here. By going here, you've opened your king a lot. And in this position, knight b8, I had just said, you know, my plan is to develop my knights and castle. But when this move happens, suddenly I get new information, which is I have a check. That was not a check previously. Previously, this would have been a waste of time because my opponent would just defend. Now I'm winning if I go here because, well, I would just win this pawn. Then I would be attacking the rook, and then I would win this pawn, and then I would probably win this pawn. So I would win literally all the pawns. And that is why you need to be on the lookout for checks, captures, attacks always, okay? And in a closed position like this one, this is, you know, well, let's say this one. This is a kind of a closed position because we both have 8 pawns. You are looking for the right type of pawn structure, putting the pawns like a puzzle piece, and then and only then going for a pawn break. The pawn breaks are pawn to f6 and pawn to c5. The spots in the position where you can potentially offer a trade of pawns to make some progress. From that perspective, f6 was not a terrible move, but now you are out of pawn breaks. You officially cannot challenge my pawn structure, and so as the game progressed, and I managed to, you know, sneak this pawn away from black, the game's just lost. You will notice, though, that I had to find knight h4, knight f5. The knight jumped to the edge of the board to then come back. That's not something that's so easily findable for an amateur player. And you'll also notice I didn't touch these pawns. I traded my dark squared bishop. I built a granite wall against that bishop, and I needed to maneuver my pieces around. Okay, so I needed to move around that structure. Could I have prepared like something like this? Yes, but look at what this does to my advantage. 1.3, whereas originally it was plus 3.4. So significant decrease, right? Now, let's proceed because, let's also update our win-loss. I might play a Sicilian dragon. It's been a second I haven't, okay, so let's play, Let's play a Sicilian defense, e4, c5. Queen to f3, love it. Knight to c6. You'll notice that I'm again putting the, the pawn and then the knight behind. Now, what's really nice when they try to scholars mate you, by the way, 680 rated player, highest rated player I've played so far trying to scholars mate me. Pretty hilarious. The nice thing about the Sicilian defense is that if you play the Sicilian, and I was going to play the dragon with g6, bishop g7, you don't have to actually stop this attack. You can immediately go here, which is quite funny because it's a fork, not quite because the queen can defend, but I also protect checkmate. So I will immediately be trading the knight for the bishop, and the difference between this knight for bishop trade and the one from the previous game is in the previous game, I damaged the pawn structure. Yeah, here nobody's pawn structure is getting damaged. And so now I just need to make sure this is defended. So I develop in the center. And now my light squared bishop is out. Maybe I put it here. Maybe I go there. I think my opponent is going to... Okay, now look. This is actually an annoying move. Let's blunder into our opponent's plan. The best move is queen here, but if we block, our opponent's going to win a pawn and think that they're very smart. And so now we're going to say, all right, I messed up, right? That wasn't smart. So how about I just play like knight f6? I'm going to just develop all my pieces. Now, my opponent is still kind of trying to, mess around with me a little bit, maybe, trying to get into the position. All right, what do we know about chess? We know that we want to have good principles. So let's kind of continue with our dragon Sicilian. I think my opponent's going to keep attacking, by the way. I think he's going to bring the knight. So in the dragon, you like to play bishop g7 and then castle. Okay, so the knight is here. Let's see, they're trying to come here. Let's just trade off the knight. Let's just make sure we can't lose any more material. Then let's put our bishop on g7, and then let's castle our king. We've lost a pawn, but worse things have happened. Okay, we've castled, everything is safe, and okay, they're still attacking us, like, relentless. Okay, is there a threat? The answer is no. What I like to do in positions like this is I like to just kick the knight out for good measure, just like make sure that it can't attack anything. Now, the best move in this position for black, a little tricky to understand, I would say, even at my level. I think the best move is probably something like, I want to go rook to b8, but then I would lose this pawn. So I think the best move might be a5, and then preparing the move rook to b8. Would a 660 play that? I, highly doubt it. So let's just go rook b8 first and lose this pawn, because I think that's far more normal. But on the other side, we have bishop takes b2. So we are going to win back a pawn. And we have to see that the board is a big place, right? So we take the pawn back on b2. So we are still a pawn down. My opponent hasn't really played poorly, I have to say. But I also haven't, as ruthlessly punished this as I could. Because I do want to give some of these people a good position to then show you how to play out of a bad position. This move looks like it makes sense. I don't know how much sense it makes. It's an interesting move for sure. I guess the idea is that if I take here, you could maybe take this. I can also attack the queen first. And then if the queen goes here, I unfortunately can't trap the queen, but I can then take the bishop, and then I can take the pawn. So maybe I go rook here first. Look at me being all fancy. So I get out of the pin. My bishop is completely hanging, but I'm attacking the queen first. I could have taken the bishop as well. But I'm, now I'm getting a little bit annoyed by the way my opponent is playing this position. So I would like to punish a little bit. Now, I can retreat my bishop, which is kind of a funny move. Or I can take this pawn. Or I can take... Right, I can take the bishop and then take the pawn. Let's take the bishop and then take the pawn. So very simple combo. We take the bishop, we grab the pawn, and now we have both won each other's B and A pawns, and the position is equal. Of course, white should castle here without thinking. You don't even need to consider another move. Now, as the person playing with black... Yeah, but this person's very aggressive. Okay, so they go queen back to b3, creating another threat. Now, I can, of course, come all the way back. I can also defend my rook with a move like queen to a5. I can... Ooh, how about rook a4 attacking the knight? That looks like a nice move. Let's go rook back, defended by the bishop, good piece coordination, attacking the knight. I also can attack, right? I think white is going to go here, because everything they do is an attacking move, and that is an attacking move as well. So, but so far, I mean, I have to say, like, opponent has played pretty decently. Okay. I have many moves. My knight is attacking my queen. I play rook before, attack the queen, and defended by the pawn. Simple move. Now, white hasn't castled. So at this point, I'm thinking of different ways to annoy white. Can I maybe get my queen in the game? Let's see. Queen b6. Maybe pawn to e6. Trying to... Oh, how about pawn to e5? Look at this idea, to try to activate my queen without moving it. You can activate a piece without moving it. I saw that move in 1 second, but I'm trying to explain the thought processes to you, right? Some of you might have been thinking something like a rook to g4. A rook generally should not just charge into pawns, because if a rook comes here, white just pushes. This would be a much more useful move for a queen, which would then zigzag around. By the way, this is a funny move, man. Like, this is where your bad habit of just relentlessly attacking backfires. Because this move not only is not an attack, it is a straight up loss of a pawn, which not only is a loss of a pawn, it results in you being under a massive attack. White should have castled without thinking. I actually really like how white played if they then pump the brakes a little bit, which they didn't do. Now this is coming. Now white might play king f1 and blunder. White might even play queen c4 and blunder. White might play queen a6 because everything you are trying to do is an attacking move. So now I have a very easy way to win this position. You can give a check. That's a completely reasonable move. When the king comes here, you can then give another check. You can also do this backwards. I attack the rook, but more importantly, the plan here is you cannot come forward. So I'm weaving a checkmate net. That is what I'm doing here. This is called weaving a checkmate net. And white can't go here because that's illegal. White can go here. This is mate. That is actually a good move. That is a good move. That is a move to survive. So I can take... I'm going to do that. Of course, you need to take with a knight here. I don't know if my opponent's capable. If they take with a king, I'm going to take this pawn and this pawn. And if they go there, I'm going to go check and win this pawn. And so now we have a queen and a rook for a queen and a knight. And we also have an extra pawn. We can win this position by checkmate, or we can win this position in an endgame. As always, my opponent continues to attack me. If you are only thinking about defending here, you're going to play a move like rook to d8 and not realize that when the queen was on that square, it actually defended the pawn. So now I win another pawn. Every one of these moves is going to come back and hurt. So white is now going to play knight to e3 or knight to c3. I'm going to go here. White is going to play knight to c4, attacking this pawn again. I'm going to push the pawn and force a queen trade. Right, so knight c4, pawn to d5. Now the queens see each other. So after queen takes, pawn takes, the knight stays hanging. Then my opponent is going to take this pawn and not notice that when I took back the queen, rook to f2 is a check. And I will end up in an endgame with 3 extra pawns against the knight with my rook, and then I will promote these pawns. And that is why you watch Gotham Chess, because I understand the mind of the beginner chess player and how to make you a stronger chess player. Now we have a very easily winning position. This is why you watch, because I understand. I get people. It really helps. Okay, this is the only check. How do you win this position? Extremely simple. Do not go pawn chasing. Start pushing. Knight goes back to f4. You push this pawn. It doesn't matter. They can come down here. I don't care. We're going to try to make a queen. We're trying to make a queen. All the knight can do is check you. The king stays exactly where it is. The rook is on a perfect spot. By the way, you can push. By the way, you don't have to push, but you can, because you just okay, go all the way over here, make the pawn. It's ladder mate. The most effective technique in the endgame. Cut the king off on the second rank. King can't cut off the first rank now, and in this position, nobody can even defend the king. My opponent can eat all the pawns they want, h2, and when the king comes here, just don't promote, rook to g2, and you win. You make a second rook, and you win the game. And that is how you win an endgame. This was a very aggressive player. This player would have beaten a lot of people rated 670. Probably does. And now we will make a second rook and win the game with a ladder mate. Now, that was a very, very good game. I got to tell you, these 670s, man, these 670s used to be terrible, you know? I was going to play a Sicilian dragon. A dragon Sicilian is one where you play like this, and then, well, you know, knight here, and then something like pawn to g6, bishop g7. It's a very nice opening. I will try to play it a couple more times. Donnie always recommended it as well. I like to recommend it for intermediate players. Now, you know, the best move here in the opening is probably to just block the bishop. You really should not Scholars Mate Carl Khans or Sicilians. It just doesn't work. The most effective way to play a Scholars Mate is against e4, e5, because the bishop has a direct line of sight against the weak f7 pawn. You should not play this against the Sicilian, because I can just block the bishop and then your whole position doesn't make any sense. Actually, this is not the best move, but I like it. And then here my opponent went here, and as I said, the best move was to trade the queen because we lost the pawn. And then here, you know, White's position is pretty good, but because they are, you know, just so aggressively playing, even on move 11, I lost the pawn. I'm still doing great. And here, you know, what did I tell you the best move was here? Pawn to a5? Yeah, pawn to a5 is a very reasonable move. The computer actually likes losing this pawn, but it likes it for very obscure reasons. It likes it because now it wants to go pawn to e6, and the idea of pawn to e6 is open the center because the king is there. So if pawn takes e6, now you go here, and then if castles, bishop d5, oh my gosh, you're trapping the queen. I mean, that's wicked stuff. That's, yeah, I mean, nobody's going to see that, obviously. But here, yes, the best move is pawn to a5 to try to set up a rook b8 and, you know, a4 and just kind of, but yes, in general, this pawn is quite annoying, and, you know, it would make sense for me to want to trade it to try to open up the position more and more. And with a king in the middle like this, I mean, you just can't play like this. You know, I'd play like queen g5, you could take my bishop, I would take g2, you would have to go here, and I mean, this is just miserable for white, because your king is stuck in the center forever, even though black is down material. In the game, my opponent played quite reasonably. I thought we were going to get this, and then either takes or takes, something like this, but I found a nice move here. All the tension here, my rook is pinned, but go here, and then this position is still equal. Like, my opponent was actually playing very, very reasonably, but hopefully my thought process was fully explained, and I went e5 to try to bring my queen over there, and my opponent should have castled and went here, and now it goes from equal to completely lost. But you have to spot rook takes pawn. You have to look at the long moves. The hardest thing to spot in chess is the long move. You know, the long move. Not easy. Let's play one more. Okay, this is now the highest rated player that I have played in the entire slow run. Plays d4. Let's play a Dutch defense. I haven't played a Dutch defense yet. This is a great opening. It's called the Gotham Dutch, the way I like to play it. h3 is crazy. Okay. Is he going to play a gambit? No way. Okay, g3, I mean. g4 is quite interesting. So the way I like to play the Dutch is I like to play it like this. And now, generally, I like to put the bishop on b4, but that move doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now because my opponent would just block. So there are several ways to play the Dutch. I will play something called the Stonewall Dutch defense, which is an opening where you build up a bunch of pawns on the light squares, like this. It's a very rock-solid opening. And, okay, normally white castles that way, and we try to attack on that side. But it looks like white might be trying to castle this way. Let's castle, and let's see what happens. Is white going to castle over here? Okay, white is not castling, so we don't have a lot of information. I can continue to move these pieces out. Obviously, in case you can't tell, in the Stonewall, the problem is the light squared bishop. But we can develop it. We can go here and put it over here, actually. So let's do that. Let's attack the queen. Defended by the knight. White could go here, counterattacking our pawn. White could also go back. Okay, so the pawn's under attack. We can defend this pawn with the rook or with the queen or even with the king or even by moving the bishop back. I would love to play this move because it's clear that, you know, my knight is being supported by those two pawns, but I can't, obviously. But, you know, what if I went with my queen? Like, I played a move that I unpinned my knight. You think my opponent would notice what I'm trying to do? So obviously now I'm trying to jump into this position. Okay, b4. Now I jump in. Look at that. I got out of the pin. I snuck out of being pinned so I can jump my knight into the center of the board. And that looks very nice for me, actually. Okay, bishop takes. As we know, bishop for knight, so loosey-goosey. I don't know. I think I'm going to take like this. In general, I like taking like this because with your f-pawn toward the middle, because you open up your rook. So now my rook has more vision. Also, I am restricting the knight from developing to the very natural f3 square. Oh, we've already addressed this. This is a closed position. Yes? In chess, you have to know this. Open or closed position. When both sides have all their pawns, 8-8, and it's clear we're all deadlocked, you know, it's closed position. Now, you will notice here, this bishop is kind of stuck. So we attack it. All right. Now, in a closed position, you can use pieces or you can use pawns. What does that mean? In a closed position, you can maneuver pieces around the pawns, kind of like little checkpoints, or you can use the pawns. You can make pawn breaks. So my opponent ends up sacrificing the bishop for a pawn. That was not the best move, and I will show you why. We talked about the fishing pole a little bit in earlier episodes. If you're missing any of this information, go back and watch. You know, it's all there for you. So now it's a very tough spot. I just said close position, pieces and pawns. So this move has no threat. What on earth do you do? Should you attack with pawns? Well, they control that square 1, 2, 3. Have we gotten all of our pieces out? No. Okay, easy move. Have we gotten all our pieces out? No. No, we haven't. Let's get the knight in the game. And the rooks are now connected. Now, a very aggressive move here by white is pawn to f5. Very scary move. That's also a little dangerous. You know, obviously they're trying to attack us. Okay, they want to come here. Oh, maybe now we can play this move. Because now we defend it 1, 2, 3 times. So if there, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, we attack the queen. Okay, it looks safe to me. Let's go for it. Not the best move, I don't think, but you know, let's try to open up the position. Why? We have an extra piece. We want a piece. Does this move have a threat? The answer is no. Okay. So should we take this way or this way? Now, if we take this way, after pawn takes, we could take with the bishop and we win a pawn. So that looks good to me. Pawn takes, and bishop takes. And after that, we even have a pin. So that's really good. Except you're forgetting something. You're forgetting that when this pawn takes, the rook sees the bishop. It still would work. We'll analyze, but my opponent obviously freaked out a little bit. So we'll just keep taking. I mean, why not, right? We're 600. Let's just keep taking. There's still nothing yet over here. Okay, the knight just comes back, but what's funny about this is we were going to do this anyway, right? So we might as well. And on the next move, we're going to go rook c8. So if my opponent allows rook c8, it's over. It's totally over. Game is totally lost. Because we're going to get to the knight, and then we're going to get to everything else. They need to get out of the pin, just like I did. Otherwise, it's going to be too dangerous. And also, they needed to open the position here faster. And they did. That's very good. Nice move. I'm still probably going to go here. I still think it's a good move. Like, I attack the knight. The knight probably has to skedaddle. Maybe this to attack my bishop. Then I will bring my bishop back. It's important to see through stuff like this because it looks really, really intimidating. But the truth is, the opponent actually has to make the launch into your position. And if they don't, then there is nothing there. Okay, does this have a threat? No. When the knight moved, my rook sees this. I look around, everything is protected, everything is good, rook c2. And what's funny is my rook actually coordinates with this bishop, and that is absolutely devastating. Like, because white has been so hesitant, I just completely smash into the position. White should have played pawn to f5 and pawn to g5. The thing about pawn to g5 is it doesn't actually do anything. If you just breathe, they're like, it's not checkers. I don't have to take this pawn. So my opponent is relying on multiple moves ahead. They are relying on pawn takes, queen moving over. But it's actually kind of easy to poke a hole in this attack. How is it easy? This pawn used to defend this pawn. You actually are going to get your queen to that side of the board faster than the person that was attacking you. Now, if you take this pawn, it's probably also not like completely horrible, but again, it's not checkers. You have the move right now. You can also take this pawn, attacking the queen. The drawback of that move, which I will play, is you force the queen to the strong square, and then you might lose. Then you might lose. So you don't want to help the opponent, and that is really tragic because they just lost their queen. Yeah, and that might happen. You know, this is life. And now it doesn't matter that the king is open. You don't not play moves in chess because you go, oh, my king is open. You don't play moves in chess because they concretely blunder something. There is a concrete reason. Don't summarize things with words like, oh, my king is open. There's nothing here. And by the way, that is a free rook, but the queen getting there is much better. Opponent's going to give me check because, of course, everybody loves to check. But it's actually mate in 2 or 3 max. Some combination of rook and queen. And it should be checkmate. Actually, it is mate in 2. Yep, I just said everybody loves to check. Up to king h8, rook g3, king h2, and queen h2 mate, actually. Okay, this is actually a very nice defensive move. Let's see if my opponent spots rook g2 to defend the king, or if the king is going to go running. It goes running, and we win. That was not an easy game either. You know, closed position, open position. I played a Dutch defense, and as you are seeing in the slow run up until this point, I'm getting close to 700, as we are 32-0. I have yet to really, you know, play an opening, a real true opening, like the best moves past like move 5. People are, you know, you can go into these games and play certain things, but people are not going to let you play the right way for a while. And that's fine. But as long as you stay principled, then, and hopefully you're learning a couple openings. Like after this, you know, you can go play a Stonewall Dutch. The Dutch defense, Stonewall. I also have it on Chessly, but, you know, it works against different white setups. And in this game, I just played normal chess. My opponent went here. And here I was like, well, I need to develop my knight and my bishop. I can develop my knight to the middle. And, you know, some of you might be like, what develop? But that's not even, yeah, but it's at least it's in the game. It's off the home square. And, you know, this is quite nice. My bishop is on a long diagonal, much better than eating rocks over here. Every move we tried to address what our opponent was wanting to do. I wanted to jump my knight into the middle, supported very nicely. It's very rare. You can jump your knight into your opponent's position, and neither pawn can attack it, because they've already advanced. Same thing here. An opportunity to get the knight there in the future would be very nice, an outpost square. And my opponent in this position just got their bishop trapped. Now, fishing pole. Several of these slow runs ago, the concept of losing a piece but having a rook when the opponent has castled. Here the best move is something like this to give white an attack. Because if black plays this wrong, black really could lose. I mean, really, really could lose. But in the game, my opponent took and, you'll notice, stayed closed. Everything stayed closed. So then they worked up some sort of an attack. And here, instead of just, you know, moving the knight back, then moving the knight forward, what they should have done is they should have played something like, or even, let's just say hypothetically, they should have played something like F5. It's not a great move, but the point is you bring the queen. And if I take queen h6, this is very scary because the bishop is under attack. And you give a bishop check, and then pawn to c3, and now you're like, oh my gosh, bishop e7. And all of a sudden, pawn takes f5, and rook to g1. White needed to bring the queen and the rook. You have to bring the most powerful and heavy attackers into the game, and White never did that. White lined up all of these pawns, and just never moved them. So White never started an attack until it was too late. And even here, you know, I helped this, and even this position is actually very close to lost for Black. Very close. And what do I mean by very close? Pawn takes h6 check. Discovered attack. You have 3 king moves. 2 are mated, and 1 is a runaway. You have to go here. You have to go here and run. Not easy. Not easy to spot that, you know? And so in this position, what I could have done is reversed the attack. Whenever they're trying to open the line and the king is on the other side, you get the rook and reverse the attack back onto the opponent. Like judo. Boop. Now they're in a lot of trouble because now you have a massive counterattack. And that is sort of what I did in this game. So we had a Stonewall Dutch, we had a Scholar's Mate attempt, and a very early queen attacking game. So I tried to show you how to defend, how to observe your opponent's threats, be patient, stick to principles. And in the first game, I showed you that Scandinavian defense where you restrict the opponent. And I showed you how to play a pawn structure with a little bit more space and what happens when you trade a bishop early. And, you know, a lot of like little nuggets of wisdom. 32-0, close to 700, and next episode we will get there. Appreciate your support as always. I already mentioned this in the previous one. Chess for Babies out. Pre-order it. Comes out in some 4 months. You know, if you're enjoying the slow run, you know where to find me on Chessly. It's going to be an exciting end to the year. And that's all. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.